Today in this video, I want to show how I've been collecting, testing, and organizing a lot of the components for the EV conversion. I've been laying out the equipment on this cart in my garage, while the car itself is over in Oakland. I've got the battery management system. I've got the VCU, vehicle control unit. I've got a EVCC, which controls the battery charging. I've got a labeler to try and keep things in order. I've got fuses and wires and connectors, the master cutoff switch. I've got the batteries over here. In the process, I've been learning a lot about circuits, wiring, and of course the way EVs actually work. I've been watching a lot of videos, studying the wiring schematics, and just getting my head around all this work. Okay, so what I'm doing here is pulling each of the battery packs out of its box, and then doing an initial test of each one to make sure that the voltage is what they said it was when they sent it, so I can know if it's a bad battery and maybe losing power. Shouldn't be losing too much power. So far, we've been pretty lucky. Using my multimeter just to test, and so far each one has been 25 volts on the nose. Yep, 25. Nice. And so I'm keeping a little spreadsheet going, a Google Docs spreadsheet, and I'm putting down the voltage for each battery. Then I'm labeling each battery. Keep these little safety tabs on there. And I'm lining them up under here just exactly the way they will be when they are in the battery box in the car. $25 again. Nice. Moment of truth. This is pack 12. Comes up 25, and we're in good health with all the batteries. 25. That is good news. Want to be really careful. I'm going to connect all of these in series, and just have to be really careful to connect positive to negative. All right, that is my entire battery pack, and it really is pretty compact. So a few days later, and the wiring is still coming along, little tiny bits here and there, but I've got my connectors for my battery packs. So this will connect all 12 packs together in series. I was inspired by a father and son team on YouTube who did a very cool bench test of their components. In their case, they used a 3D printer to mount some meters and switches. I just used some scrap plastic. Okay, so far I've gotten the VCU plugged in. It's not entirely connected to everything yet, but it is connected to the main contactor because I wanted to test that all that works. Now the contactor is not currently connected to the battery, so there's no current. When the contactor is closed, it sends power down this way, which goes to the inverter and then to the motor. But I do have these wired together and then connected to the VCU, which is what controls them. It's what turns the car on. This is my desktop power supply. It just supplies 14 volts, which runs into this little fuse box here. I've got a 30 amp fuse just for testing purposes. That runs into this little voltage meter connected to this ignition switch. When this switch goes on, it sends power to this bus bar, which then sends power to the VCU. The VCU powers up, it initiates the coil and the contactor. So let's see what happens. Oh, you hear that click? So that click was the contactor closing. So that works. That's what it's supposed to do. Now, there's a bunch more stuff to be connected, but that was one thing that I got working, so that's good. You can see my little voltmeter tells me it's 14 volts, which is what it's supposed to be. I have not hooked up this voltmeter yet, but that will go into the main contactor supply. And when that's attached to the full battery pack, that'll tell me how many volts the whole battery pack is. It should hover around 325, something like that. So I'm just connecting up all 12 modules of the batteries for the first time into one big pack, and kind of trying to be careful. Pack 9 positive into pack 10 negative. Got my high voltage rated gloves. Now that is 10 out of 12 packs connected. Okay, this is the last connection. These are a bit like hot dog fingers to work with, but a lot better than getting electrocuted, I assume. So I'm getting 16 degrees on pack 4, 16 on pack 2, 17 degrees. I bought this thermal camera because it's pretty freaking cool, but it also lets me make sure that my lithium batteries aren't heating up as I connect them all in series. If I mistakenly connect them wrong, they could short and catch fire. Luckily, still cool to the touch though. What's interesting is it really shows, I'll show you that. So when you can see the effect of just my body heat on the batteries. So just leave my hand there for a few seconds and there's a very clear palm print right on top of the battery. So that just shows that these are not very hot at all. All right, I got my multimeter. Pack 1 and pack 12, that's our main contacts. Pack 1 is our ultimate negative, and pack 12 is our positive, which should have roughly 300 volts in it. 300. So they really shouldn't heat up very much because they're not connected to a circuit. There's no amperage being drawn from them. Even though they're all connected now in series, they should just act like one big battery pack that's unconnected to anything. So they should just be stable. But of course, we have to be careful. And just since it's the first time these have all been put together into a single pack, just have to keep an eye on them for a little while, and I don't think I'll leave them connected just because I'm too nervous. Basically, I made a lot of progress wiring these up in the assumption that I was going to have all the battery modules in one box, and then I realized that that's not going to work, and I'm definitely going to have two different battery boxes, which means the way that I wired them together was wrong. Basically, I was bridging both sets of 6 batteries continuously through the BMS and the BMS satellite units. And now I'm going to separate them so that I have the BMS and the first satellite in the first battery box, and then the 2 other satellites in the second battery box. And I'm going to contain all of the cell leads within their own battery box. They're not going to bridge between the different boxes because 1, that's more complicated to wire, and 2, apparently that's not safe. Some stuff I've read is that these battery leads, they are actually high voltage, right? So they're actually carrying the sum of the voltage of the whole pack. They're very small amperages, so they're like milliamps in there. So it's not really in and of itself that dangerous. It's not going to electrocute you to touch the end of that wire because it's so little current. But if they do get shorted, there's a possibility of them carrying too much current and you could burn the wires. I think that's what would probably happen is the wire itself would just melt or catch fire. You don't want that. So it's better to keep all high voltage stuff within the same enclosure. And so it means wiring these little wires in a slightly different order than I had started to. So now I'm going back, and all the ones I did previously, I have to cut and reattach them. That's the way it goes. You learn as you go, you make mistakes, you go back, you do it again. I have 12 battery modules with 7 cells each. That's 84 individual cells, and the BMS has to be connected to each cell by a wire. I did it once, but because of my mistake, I'm doing it again. I have to cut and reconnect all those wires in the exact right order. Each one of those sets of 12 white wires connects into an LTC in the BMS module. I'm on the 5th one of them. I've wired up a number of them. I have to figure out which wires I'm still yet to go into. These are each labeled with the pack that they go to. So this one goes to pack number 8 and the positive side, pack number 8 negative, and connected to the green wire. The green wire, according to this chart, is cell number 5, which means that the first wire of these whites needs to go to cell number 6, which is orange. And here we have the orange wire. I start with stripping a little bit of the orange. Add one of these connectors. Crimp it in place. And then I have to determine which number I'm connecting it to. And I believe it will be number 1. So I will strip about 1/3 of an inch off of that. And that is one done. So yeah, that's the process. So you can see how tedious that is, but you know, it is satisfying. Now I get to test these. Okay, so I'm pretty sure I already tested 5, 6, and 7, but I'm gonna just do it one more time because I want to be safe. That is the negative contact on the board. I just hold that down and then I touch each contact. There's 12 cell contacts. Touch each one in sequence. So this is cell 1. It shows me 3.5 volts, which is correct. 7 volts, 10.6, 14.2, 17.8, 21.4, 25. Why is 8 reading 0? That's not good. 5, 28, no, that's right. 32, 35, 39, 42. Yeah, that is right. So if you haven't guessed, The point is it should go up by about 3.5 volts for each cell in order. Okay. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the battery because 9 through 12 are exactly what they're supposed to be. It's only cell 8 on this LTC that has a problem. So that means to me that it just is a bad connection in my splice. So I'm going to go back and resplice wire 8. I respliced wire 8, and now let's see. 3.5, 7.1, 10.6, 14.2, 17.8, 21.4, 25, 28.6, that's 8, 32.1, 35.7, 39.3, 42.9. All right, so cell 8 is now registering exactly what it should, 28.5. Each one of these I have to test like that, make sure it's correct. I'll now move on to wiring LTC 7 and then LTC 8, and then I'll be done. Well, fast forward a few days later, a lot more wiring done. I've now got all of the harnesses wired. It's back to being a huge pot of spaghetti, that's for sure. But it's more organized than it looks. Trust me. Anyways, I'm about to hook it all in and do the test of the BMS. Plug it into the laptop and see what readings I get. So fingers crossed. I think everything's hooked up correctly, so it should all work. So let's take a look. So I've got all of the module leads plugged into the packs. I tested them, they're all correct and working, and now it's time to plug in the LTCs into the BMS satellites. Then I've got LTC 7. There we go. And then LTC 8. All right. And let's see. BMSC, cool. Show status, voltage. Cool, 300.28 volts. That sounds exactly right. Cells 84, that's exactly right. The mean voltage is 3.575. Now there's some commands we can put in here. So to let me know what the commands are, put in help and it tells you all the potential commands. Let's check the map. Show map. Perfect. Show cells. And this will list the voltage for every single cell. Now, because it's broken into 2 packs, and there are spaces in the LTCs for up to 96 cells, but I'm only using 84, it means that it lists all up to 96, but the last 6 of each pack is empty, which is what I expect. I can take a look at each of the LTCs, show LTC. There we go. So I've got 8 LTCs. Their status is okay. Let's see. It's showing the, I don't really know what each one of those rows means or those columns. Voltage, but exactly what it's telling me about the voltage, I'm not totally sure. Now it's telling me a temperature, but I don't really know where it's getting that since I haven't plugged in the thermistors yet. Let's see, show config. So these can be charged up to 4.2 volts per cell. So Let me do the math real quick. I'm setting the max of 4.2 volts times 84 equals, so potentially the entire battery pack will get up to 352 volts when fully charged. 352.8. All right, after getting all the wires to the BMS hooked up, take a little look at what the temperature is. You can see my laptop is pretty warm, 28 degrees in the center there. And then if we look at the battery pack, it's hovering around 18 degrees. You can see the BMS and the 3 satellite units are the warmest thing. They're turned on, so that's good news. Relatively cool.